Hello and welcome to episode number 72 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam.
I'm Sahil.
And we are inching closer and closer to the regular season. This is our last episode before we preview week one. It's finally going to be time for our fifth season, and I know we're both really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I swear this has felt like the longest winter without baseball. Although I say that now, and the lockout one was definitely way worse. But oh man, I am so excited to have baseball back, and we have a fun episode here for you all today. As you all know, I posted some stuff in the chat asking for you all to provide us with some questions that you wanted to have us answer on the air. We got a very strong list of questions from you all, and we're excited to answer them. But first, we are going to discuss the top 10 players. We did this last year. We're going to go over last year's list as well, just to review it, the list that we had put together. This was inspired by us looking at last year's top 10 list and being like, we can do better than this. And I do think we did better than it last year, and I certainly think we'll do better than it this year, although I do not believe this year's list is out yet.
I don't believe it is either. I know some of the positional lists are kind of weird. They've been weird. But I think either way we could do better than whatever the list is. And if it's anything like last year, we're going to have very similar lists. Last year, we had the same 10 players in almost the exact same order. I just had Anthony Rendon a little bit higher than you had.
Yeah, we had Anthony Rendon and Freddie Freeman swapped. I had Freeman at 5 and Rendon at 10. You had Rendon at 5 and Freeman at 10. We came so close to not having different lists, but I put Rendon in there at the last second, and there we are. But you know what? Before we dive into these lists here, over under 7.5 players that we have the same.
Over. I'm going to hammer the over.
Okay, and over under 7.5 that are in the same spot.
Ooh. Let's go under.
Okay, I'm gonna go over for the just 7.5 straight up as well. And I'm gonna say under as well. I will say that I had a much harder time putting together the list this season than I did last season. There are a lot of very good candidates that I thought were kind of bunched together. And you kind of felt the same way, right?
I really did feel the same way. We really have been thinking the same about player evaluation a lot since making the podcast. So I am very curious to see. And I know we were talking a little bit off air, but trying not to give away too much. And I'm starting to think we may just have the same list.
Yeah, honestly, I'm a little scared of that too, but fingers crossed that we don't. This is, it would be nice for us to have different lists, but it was also really funny last year how we basically revealed that we had the same list without the other knowing, like live on air. That was pretty funny, but I don't know if I want that 2 years in a row. Before we reveal our top 10, I just want to clarify, this is a top 10 players in the MLB. So this is not a top 10 fantasy list. My top 10 fantasy list would definitely be different than this top 10 MLB list. You could probably
definitely you'll see no Adalberto Mondesi on either of our lists.
I don't think Adalberto Mondesi is even a top 10 fantasy player.
I don't either, but you may see some people disagree.
Yeah. The one thing I can guarantee you're not going to see, at least I hope, don't be that guy, Cam, is Ranger Suarez in the top 10.
Well, you're just going to have to see my list to see how highly I rank Ranger Suarez.
All right. I hope you are smarter than Bill James, which apparently is not that hard these days.
I hope so. So yeah, who's gonna go first?
Um, I'll go
All right,
first. I'll
you'll
go
go
first.
first.
I'll go first. Yeah, I feel like. All right, my this is a tough decision, and I will say that the difference between number 10 and some of the other guys that I kept off of this list are pretty minuscule. But my number 10 player is Mookie Betts. I had Mookie Betts as my number 2 player last year. And just to give that whole top 10 quickly, it was in order from 10 to 1. Rendon, Yelich, Tatis, Garrett Cole, Acuna, Freeman, Soto, DeGrom, Betts, and Trout. Betts has dropped to my list from last year. He is now number 10. Betts had a very good year last year, but not quite as good as some of his previous years. He had a 131 WRC plus, 23 homers, 10 steals, a 367 OBP for in only 122 games. So for most players, this is a fantastic career season. For Mookie Betts, this is a little bit of a disappointment. He did play through a hip injury last year that I think limited him a bit. It definitely depressed his stolen base numbers, but he's still, I think, one of the most talented players in all of baseball when healthy. He was really a spark plug for the Dodgers team in 2020 that won the World Series. I don't think they won that in 2020 without him. I think he's going to bounce back this year. And unlike some of the players that I left off the list, he is one of the best defenders in baseball in right field, which, again, for fantasy doesn't really mean much, but this isn't a fantasy list. So I feel really good about Mookie Betts at 10. I'll be curious to see if he's on this list next season, though. I will say if he does have another season like he did this year, I could see him easily falling off my list.
Yeah, so off to a good start here. My number 10 is Mookie Betts. Yeah.
Love it.
I struggled with this one, really. I wanted to have him higher. I had him as high as 6 or 7 at one point.
Where did you have him last year?
I think he was second on my list last year as well.
Okay.
And then I moved him off my list at one point, but in the end, I couldn't justify leaving him off completely. It's Mookie Betts. He's kind of the last couple of years been very good as opposed to elite. So like you said, it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening to him if he, in his next year with the Dodgers, bounces back to being the best top 2 hitter in baseball, or if he's just kind of more of a 140 WRC plus type of guy. But again, the defense is still elite, and he's a top 10 player in baseball.
I love how you said only a 140 WRC plus type of guy. Like, yeah. That's just.
I mean, these are top 10.
No, I know, but even despite it's just so funny to hear like that phrase. It cracks me up.
So last year we alternated who went first in each spot just to kind of combat all the spots being the same. But in my number 9 spot, I had Jose Ramirez. He was another guy. He was kind of a late addition to my list. I almost had him higher. I almost had him lower. I think 9 is a good spot for him. He's projected 5.9 WAR next year. He was worth 6.3 this year. He very easily could have been MVP of the shortened season in 2020. But this year he fully bounced back after kind of a rough-ish 2019. He had 36 homers. He had a 355 on base, 137 WRC plus. He also stole 27 bases. He plays solid defense at a solid position, the hot corner. I think Jose Ramirez, the star of the Guardians, number 9.
Well, my number 9 is also Jose Ramirez. Off to a great start here. 36 home runs, 27 stolen bases. I mean, that's fantastic. with a very solid 355 OBP, 137 WRC plus. I have a soft spot for players who have walk rates that are very close to their strikeout rates. In 2018, he actually had a walk rate that was higher than his K rate by like 3.7%. Wasn't quite there in 2021. He struck out more than he walked, but nonetheless, still fantastic. He's one of the better defenders at third base. I think one of the things that stood out to me this past season was he had 103 ribbies and 111 runs in like one of the worst lineups in baseball, and did similarly well in 2020, where, like you said, he could have easily been the MVP. It's interesting because for a little while there, I was down on Jose Ramirez. I thought he was one of those guys that like had a year and a half stretch where he just wasn't really the best player, like in the second half of 18 and all of 2019. He had a 108 WRC plus in 2019. But he has really settled in the past 2 years and proven that he is an elite player. I feel really good about Jose Ramirez at 9. I will say there's also a thing to be said about positional scarcity, and I do think that like Jose Ramirez, relative to other third basemen, is by far the best of the third basemen, which I don't think I can necessarily say about other positions. And I do think there are fewer elite third basemen these days than there are maybe at some of the other positions. So definitely Jose Ramirez at 9. Mm-hmm. But let me jump into my number 8. And why do I have a feeling we're also going to have the same number 8? My number 8 is Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper, I think for a while was a little overrated just because of some of the hype that he got when he was a top prospect, but I think it's swung around the other way now. I think Bryce Harper is flying a little bit under the radar, and he's not getting enough credit for what he's done. He led baseball in WRC plus last year. He had a 170. He had a 429 OBP, which was second behind his former teammate Juan Soto. He had a 615 slugging percentage, which led the league. He had 35 homers, 13 steals, 101 runs, 84 ribbies, just like fantastic across the board. He went on a tear at the end of the season there, and he pretty much almost single-handedly willed the Phillies into the playoffs there at the end of the season. Or at least kind of willed them back into contention. I know they only finished with 82 wins. And he won the MVP last year. So he does have some shortcomings at defense. I do acknowledge that. And the reason I don't have him ranked a little higher here is that he wasn't quite as strong with the bat in 18 and 19. And he was very good in the shortened season, but I'm not giving as much credence to that being a shortened season. So if Bryce Harper repeats this MVP season, there's every reason for me to believe he's going to move up, but I have a hard time doing that right now.
All right. So my number 8 is an NL East outfielder. It's Ronald Acuna Jr. We have differed.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. Acuna was one of the toughest ones to place because he missed a good amount of last season with an injury, but he was off to an incredible start. I mean, in just 82 games, he stole 17 bases. He had a 394 on base. Was worth 4.2 WAR. His 2020 season was very good. His 2019 season, he almost went 40-40. So there's really a lot to like with Ronald Acuna Jr. But I am a little concerned with him. Is he going to start the season on time? If he does, is he going to be playing outfield full-time or full-time right away? It's really tough. I really do like Ronald Acuna a lot, and it's hard to put him at 8, but I really just couldn't justify putting him ahead of any of the people I have in front of him. So as of right now, he is the 8th best player in baseball, but it would not surprise me at all for him to be top 3 next year easily.
Yeah, that's a good one. I definitely like Ronald Acuna.
Yeah. Oh, and it's my turn to go. Number 7. This player is I guess he's not a yellow champ anymore. It's what is it? A Giovanni? What's the name of a player on your team?
God, I'm not calling up with a good one, but for now it's Giovanni. But I need like a good nickname.
All right. Well, it's your ace pitcher. It's Garrett Cole, number 7.
Ooh.
Garrett Cole has just had 4 elite pitching seasons in a row now. Maybe 2020, the shortened season wasn't quite as good with a 389 FIP, but he's still been great. 2019, he struck out 13.8 batters per 9. 2021, he struck out only 12.06. But even after the sticky stuff ban, people were saying he was going to take a step back. He did not. He still had a 292 FIP. He's walking very few batters. He's near the top in all of baseball. I believe he's second among all players, hitter or pitcher, in WAR from 2019 to 2021. And I'd say he's the 7th best player in baseball and the first pitcher on the list.
All right, that's interesting. I'll say right now, Garrett Cole was literally number 11 on my list.
Interesting.
I had a tough time leaving him off.
Hey, so for the first time, our 10 aren't going to be the same. That's exciting.
I love that. I think the thing that got me with Garrett Cole, and maybe I'm a little biased because I did, kind of track him closely through the fantasy season last year. The one thing that got me with him was just after the sticky stuff, he wasn't quite the same. There were a couple clunkers in there. He generally kind of straightened it out a bit, but he wasn't quite as dominant. Now I do still think he is every bit as dominant, of a pitcher, as he was before. I do personally think of full-time starting pitchers, he is the 2nd best starting pitcher in the league, in my opinion. I want to see a full season of him without the sticky stuff. And then I do think, like you said, 2020 was good, but not as sharp. I think that has me just putting Garrett Cole just outside the top 10. I think the difference for me between him and Betts was very, very good in 2020 and instrumental to that World Series run. And I think just that fact alone gave him the slight edge. But I mean, it's the slightest edges. And I still love Garrett Cole. I had Garrett Cole on last year's list at number 7, just like you do on this year's list. But let's talk about my number 7. My number 7 is Ronald Acuna Jr. I think you're right. He could be higher. When I compared him with Mike Trout, Acuna played 82 games, but which is kind of convenient because I'm not saying I would just strictly double that and then that's Ronald Acuna Jr.'s season, but I think his numbers would have been better across the board had he been able to play a full season. I do think there is some risk just because, one, I don't know how much Acuna is going to run coming off the torn ACL. And 2, I don't think we're going to see him play the field early on in this season, but he is only 23. He is young enough where I think he's going to bounce back and 100% be the player that he was before. I just think he's also made some gains in his walk rate over the past couple of years. And he did cut down his strikeout rate this past year, which I think was really big. In my opinion, I still really like Ronald Acuna, but I certainly think he could be higher. I had him at 6 on last year's list, but just there's at least a little bit to be concerned about with the ACL. So I had Acuna at 7. Let's move on to number 6 here. Number 6, I have a yellow champ on this list. I have Fernando Tatis Jr. last year when we talked about this, I had Tatis at 8, and I think one of the reasons I had him a little lower than the list of guys like Soto and Acuna Jr., like other young guys who he's forever going to be linked to, is that Tatis had not proven it over a full season. He played 130 fantastic games last year, 42 homers, 25 stolen bases, 99 runs, 97 ribbies, 364 OBP. Only at the age of 22, which is insane. And he did this with the shoulder issue. I mean, I think I was freaking out in April when his shoulder popped. And then somehow, despite it looking like a season-ending injury, he played through it and he was fantastic. He is going to miss 3 months to start the season with the wrist. And that definitely concerns me. But like, how do you play 100 and even if he played 145 games last year, I think he wins the MVP. I think he is arguably, you can make the case he's the most talented hitter or the most talented player in baseball currently, especially if health was not an issue. And like Acuna, I think he's higher on my list if health isn't an issue, but that's just holding me back a little bit here. And I know you all are probably saying, well, hey, he's going to be out for 3 months. How's he on your top 10 list? Well, I think these are the top 10 players right now. I'm not necessarily looking at injuries. Otherwise, this list would look radically different for reasons you'll see later. Yeah, give me some Tatis all the way. He is going to be a stud for the next decade plus.
Yeah. So what's interesting is with you having Garrett Cole off your list, that means you have someone in your top 5 who is not on my list at all.
And I think I know exactly who that player is. And I think you're wrong for not even having him in your top 10.
I think it's interesting. Well, my number 6 is also Fernando Tatis Jr. for basically all the reasons you just said. He's maybe the most talented player in all of baseball. He's fast. He hits the ball really hard. He gets on base a ton. He strikes out maybe a little more than you would like, but he hits the ball well. But I am, just like you said, I'm concerned about the injuries. It's kind of becoming a recurring thing for him now. 2021, and especially with, it doesn't seem like he takes his injuries seriously enough. You know, he could have been shut down for longer in 2021, and maybe he wouldn't have had some of the lingering effects that plagued him towards the end of the season and throughout the offseason. He's gotten in multiple motorcycle accidents, including one that's going to sideline him for the first 3 months of the season. So that's something. That is something that caused him to slide down. I had him at 4th at one point on my list before kind of considering the injuries, but I think 6th is still a reasonable spot for him.
Well, I think just the counter to that is he's only 22. I think he's going to mature a bit. And I think some of the things like the motorcycle accidents aren't going to be a concern moving forward. But I think you're definitely right. You're justified in moving him down because of that.
Absolutely. Number 5 on my list, someone you've already mentioned also, so I'll be brief about him. It's Bryce Harper, NL MVP 2021. And he just, Bryce Harper has had, 2015, one of the best seasons of the entire 2010s decade. And then moving forward along from there, 2021, this past season, was his second MVP. He walked at a 16.7 clip after walking at a 20% clip in 2020. So his plate discipline is incredible. He's hitting for power. He had 35 home runs this year. In his previous full season, he hit 35 home runs. His season before that, he had 34. So very consistent with the power. And a 170 WRC plus was just remarkable, anchoring that Philly outfield alongside Nick Castellanos. The one issue, which, like Castellanos, is the defense, but I think he hits the ball so well. He had all these expectations, and I think he's lived up to them, not in like a LeBron way, but but certainly in a respectable way. People thought he would be a Hall of Famer when he was 18, and now he's 29, and he probably will be a Hall of Famer. So good for him.
Yeah, I wonder if I had him a little too low at 8. Although, like, I look at the names above him, and I'm like, it's just like, I don't know how much higher I really could have put him at. I am making a slight order switch as we talk. Or have you given your whose turn is it? Is it mine or yours?
I just gave 2 in a row, so you're up.
Okay. I'm making a slight order switch to mine as we're live on the air. So you're going to appreciate this. My number 5, and I don't think this is the one that you have on your list, but it's Trey Turner.
Oh, I do not have him on my list.
Trey Turner led the league in WAR last year with a very nice 6.9. He had won the batting title last year with a 328, which in today's day and age is like basically impossible to hit. 28 home runs, 32 stolen bases. His defense, he's one of the better defenders in the league of like Fangraphs kind of like defensive metrics here. He's ranked as the 22nd best defender. I do think from a pure, he had a 142 WRC plus, so not quite at the level of somebody like Bryce Harper's 170, but I do think the defense to a degree kind of balances it out. I do think, like, though, if there is one player where I'm like, maybe I could have switched him with Bryce Harper, I think it is Trey Turner. But I think the defense, coupled with just how good Trey Turner's bat is and the fact he did lead baseball in WAR last year, I think kind of motivated me to give him a little bit of the edge here. He also was really good in the shortened season in 2020 as well. So I feel like Trey Turner was solid early in his career, but more of kind of like a fantasy darling. And I think he's really taken off the past 2 years to also become an elite hitter as a whole. So nice to see the power spike this year too. Like, he was almost a 30-30 hitter. That was not something I expected from Trey Turner going into 2020.
Yeah, I left him off my list. I should clarify that he led full-time hitters in WAR, not all of baseball. There were a few pitchers and two-way players who were ahead of Trey Turner in WAR.
Yeah, yeah, that's an important clarification.
But yeah, he did have a really good season. He had a good 2020, but I'm not convinced the track record of power is long enough. I don't know. He doesn't walk a ton. He doesn't. He does play pretty good defense in 2021, but back in 2019 and 2020, his defensive ratings were not very good. So who knows? Defense is weird. Defense is hard to predict year to year. So I left him off. He probably would have been in the 13, 14-ish range for me.
Yeah, I wonder now in hindsight, I wonder if he would have been kind of better off like flip-flopping with Bryce Harper, and maybe Trey Turner. I should have had 8 on my list, and Bryce Harper I should have 5. And honestly, I might make that correction live on the air. But I really like
stick with your guns. This is.
You know what? Screw it. I'm gonna stick to my guns. I mean, he led the league. He led baseball, or he led full-time hitters in WAR this year. And I'm not gonna, he was more valuable than Bryce Harper this year when you combine the defense, and I'll stick by that. That's fine.
All right, time for your number 4.
Yes, my number 4 player is a Cam Kane favorite. It's Juan Soto. Juan Soto, this number never fails to the base. It's a 22.2% walk rate with only a 14.2% K rate. He's just insane. I will say that, like, that elite skill, coupled with pretty decent power. He's not the best power hitter. He's got 29 home runs, 95 ribbies, 111 runs is great. 9 steals is like solid. It's not like, anything super special. 163 WRC plus. So I think that's third of full-time hitters here. He does get a little bit of a knock for me because he doesn't play a premium defensive position, and he's not like an above average defender in the corners either. But Juan Soto is just such a special talent with the bat that like there is no reason not to, place him at number 4. I'm assuming you have Juan Soto on your list, and I'm going to let you talk about him a little more because he's your guy.
Yeah, so I'll talk about Juan Soto when I get to him. Once his name gets called. But right now is my number 4, and this is a guy who was probably the hardest player to place on this list. You could have him as high as number 1. You could have him down at number 10. But what's interesting about him, he's the most interesting player in baseball, and that's because there are 2 of him. And when someone says his name, there is always one question you have to ask, and that is, Sahil, take it away.
The Wade or the Miley?
Of course, the pitcher or the hitter, Shohei Ohtani, two-way extraordinaire. 8.1 combined WAR, 5.1 of it coming as a hitter, 3.0 coming as a pitcher. If he did this every year, then he would win MVP every year, and then he would be number 1 every year. But as of right now, he's only had 1 season where he's been full-time for the entire year as a hitter or a pitcher, and without getting hurt, that is, because he has had injury issues, and that's kind of the concern right now with me not putting him higher. But man, as a proof of concept, it worked. It really worked in 2021 with him playing every day. He hit 46 homers, 372 on base, 152 WRC plus, and he stole 26 bases. He is also like one of the fastest players in baseball. He is just so remarkable. And then as a pitcher, he only made 23 starts, but he's still 10.77 Ks per 9, walked maybe a few too many batters, but he still had a 3.18 ERA. There's just nothing he can't do. And he's another guy who, if he repeats his season, and if he repeats his health, which, I mean, he's certainly putting an awful strain on his body, then he's number 1 next year.
Oh, easily. It would not be close. Like if he could just stay healthy, is there no reason he's not winning the MVP like each of the next like 5 years?
Oh yeah, how could he not? I had an OTP sim where I just played Babe Ruth as a two-way player for his entire career, and he won like 12 MVPs.
Yeah, I mean, it's just bonkers. Like what Shohei is doing is absolutely insane.
Oh yeah. And number 3 now, I had Jacob deGrom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Jacob deGrom, and I'm starting to think our top 4s might be very different from each other, which is very good. Jacob deGrom, he was not healthy for all of 2021, but when he was on pace for the best pitching season, maybe of all time, if not since Dwight Gooden or even Bob Gibson. He, in 92 innings, had a 108 ERA, 124 FIP. He was striking out 14.28 per 9, walking 1.08 per 9. He just keeps getting better every single year. He is an animal. He pitched half a season, and he still had a case to be Cy Young. He's the best pitcher in the league. He's the best pitcher. He's the 3rd best player in all of baseball.
All right. Great picks. So I will do my number 3. It is Shohei Ohtani. For all the reasons that you said, I do think, we're in agreement. Shohei if this list was just based off of last year, Shohei is 100% the number one player. It's really just, is this repeatable? He hasn't shown that this can be repeatable yet, as shown by the injury issues that he had at the beginning of his career. He is so much fun to watch. In terms of the most fun players to watch, he would be number one in this list, absolutely. Just the I don't know how he does it, and like it's the hitting alone was just fantastic. Like his offensive season alone might be enough to put him on this top 10 list. 46 homers, 103 runs, 100 ribbies, 26 stolen bases, a 372 OBP, and then you add the very good pitching season on top. I mean, it is bonkers. I mean, the only thing that he could maybe do better is also play the field some more than just a couple of outfield appearances sprinkled in here or there. But to the point about the repeatability, before this season, do you want to guess how many innings he had pitched in his major league career?
90.
53 and a third.
Man.
He only had 12 starts. That surprised me. That felt low. Yeah, but and that's exactly the concern. But I'm incredibly excited to see what Shohei's encore is. I think he's very, very clearly the most exciting player in baseball. Number 2, I put Jacob deGrom.
Okay.
I mean, 108 ERA, 1.24 FIP last year. I mean, he was just insane. I mean, it is a real shame we got robbed of a full season, because I think that easily would have been the best pitching season of the 21st century. And like you said, he was still a Cy Young candidate with the 92 innings that he did pitch. How many innings do you think he would have had to pitch to have won the Cy Young last year?
I think probably only 20 more than he did.
I think so too. I think if he got 115, 120, he would have won the Cy Young. I mean, he was that good.
Because Corbin Burns won Cy Young with only 167 innings.
Right. And Corbin Burns were as dominant as he was, and he was a consideration for the list, but ultimately the track record kind of kept him off my list. Yeah, I mean, for as good of a season as Burns had, deGrom was just better. deGrom had a 4.9 WAR in his 15 starts. I mean, if you double that, he was a 10 WAR player last year.
Man.
And he had a 9 WAR season in 2018. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could do that. So deGrom at number 2. I had deGrom as my number 3 player last year. And also catching up with Soto. I did have Soto as my 4 player last year and my 4 player this year. So definitely some similar names here in my top 4 so far. But let's hear your number 2 and your number 1, Cam. I think I know who both of them are, but
I think you know who both of them are, but the question is the order. And my number 2 is Mike Trout.
Oh no. Oh,
yeah, I went full homer at number 1, but number 2 is Mike Trout. I mean, he's Mike Trout. I was about to say, hey, he's Mike Trout. He's the best player in baseball. But if that was the case, I should have put him number 1. Mike Trout, since as long as he's been in the league, he has been the best hitter in the league. If you move the plate appearance minimum down, since 2019, he's got the best WRC plus in the league. And he's 6th or 7th in WAR. His 2021 was shaping up to be one of his finest. He had a 466 on base in 36 games. He only played 36 games, which would have been by far his best. 624 slugging would have been one of his best. 190 WRC plus would have been his best. He was walking an 18.5% clip. So he's doing just phenomenal there. But the one thing keeping him off of number one is the injuries. He missed almost all of 2021. He dealt with some injuries in 2019. He dealt with some injuries in 2017. It's starting, and I'm worried it's becoming a trend. I'm worried that he's turning into Ken Griffey Jr.
Oh, don't say that. That breaks
I know.
my
I
heart.
hate to say it, but it's
Oh,
it's a little, and he's still number two. It's not like I have him 9 or anything, but there's a little something there. There's a little twinge of worry that he's turning into Ken Griffey Jr. And obviously there has been no decline yet, but he is now on the wrong side of 30. It's hard to say what to project of him in over the next 5 years. I know a lot of fantasy drafts, he's outside of the top 6 or 7 for the first time in.
he's outside of the first round in a lot of drafts.
Yeah, so that's clouding my judgment a little too much. His good stats in 2021 were also buoyed by a 456 BABIP, which I didn't notice until right this second.
You are nitpicking, but yeah.
I mean, you got to nitpick when
Yeah,
you're deciding why Mike Trout isn't number one, or when you're deciding the difference between all of these players who are all-time greats in the making,
No. Very fair. Very fair. Why don't you give your justification for Soto over Trout?
So Juan Soto walked at a 22.2% clip last year. He had a 465 on base, 163 WRC plus. Over the past 3 years, his WRC plus is by far higher than anyone not named Mike Trout. So among healthy, active, everyday players over the past 3 years, he has hit better than everyone else. Additionally, from 2019 to 2021, he is second in WAR. Number one is actually someone we both left off our list. That's Marcus Semien.
Still, when you told me that, I didn't believe it.
Yeah, Marcus Semien's number one in WAR of the past 3 years. So that's something to reckon with. I almost put him in my top 10 based on that alone.
Same, yeah.
But Juan Soto is number 2, and his on-base percentage is 100 points higher than Marcus Semien's. And Marcus Semien plays a premier position, which kind of bumps his defensive rating up. And in that time span, I don't know what else to say. Juan Soto has a 440 on-base percentage over the past 3 years. The one thing, if you had to nitpick, he only hit 29 home runs this past year. But he has hit 30 in the past, and he's still only 22. His trajectory is going to the moon. I think Juan Soto is the best player in baseball.
Yeah, I have Mike Trout number 1. I mean, I think Soto is the second best in full-time bats, and I don't think it's particularly close. But I still give him the benefit of the Trout did I say the benefit of the Trout?
Benefit of the Trout. There you go.
I'm still giving the benefit of the doubt to Trout. I mean, for all the reasons, 190 WRC plus unlimited time this year. I mean, he did play basically a full season in 2020. He played 53 games, 134, 140 to 2 years before that. So yeah, it's not the 157, 159, 159 he put up through from age 21 to age 24. But it's still like a lot. I do think that even Trout at 140 games or 130 games is still the best player in baseball. You mentioned the walk. As much as he struck out, his last 2 full seasons, he was very close to that. And in 2017, he did walk more than he struck out. There's a little more of a speed component I'm comfortable with predicting for him in there. And I do think he's going to hit for more power than Juan Soto, or maybe probably about the same amount of power. I do think the on-base percentages are going to be similar to Soto's. I do think Soto's going to overtake him at some point, and it could be as soon as this year. But I want to give Trout's kind of been dealt with the unlucky hand of a COVID year and then this injury year. I want to give him one more opportunity to play a full season in a normal year and see what happens there before I'm ready to move him out of the number one spot. I still think he is the most talented player. And I will say, like, I did give consideration to putting Shohei at 1. I did give consideration to putting Juan Soto at 1. And I did give consideration to putting DeGrom at 1. I do think that those are the 4 players, Trout, DeGrom, Ohtani, and Soto, that kind of represent a tier. I do think that, like, Tatis, Acuna, Harper, Ramirez, and Turner probably constitute another tier. And then I think that, like, Mookie and some of the guys that I left off the list, including Vlad Jr., who I'm curious to hear why you left him off the list. And guys I left off the list like Garrett Cole, Corbin Burns, Max Scherzer. I do think that's kind of more of another tier of players itself. But yeah, that's my top 10.
So Vlad, to speak on him, was my number 11. He was hard to push off the list, but I ended up doing it for 2 reasons. One, because he doesn't have the long track record. This was his first season as an animal at the plate in the majors. And he was impressive, but he kind of, I think his on base percentage fell a little bit down the stretch to 401, which 401, it's great. But I think it was higher for most of the season. And he had been his first 2 seasons kind of good, not great, before breaking out this year. And the other is he doesn't really have a position. He played first base this past year, but not particularly well. He previously played third base, which I think 10 years from now, we're all going to laugh and be like, hey, remember when Vlad Jr. played third base? That was weird.
It'll be like Edgar Martinez.
Yeah. Or,
David Ortiz.
Yeah, David Ortiz. Ryan Braun played third base his rookie year.
My God. When we're talking about worst defensive seasons of all time, like Ryan Braun's 2007 season at third base might literally be the worst defensive season.
And 10 Ryan Domit seasons.
Oh my God. Yeah. I recently figured out, for reasons that we'll see later in the episode, just how bad Ryan Domit's defense was. Like, God, I think just to give some context in this, because this was really fun. Ryan Domit had a season where he had a 123 WRC plus, but he had a negative 3.4 WAR. Like, that's insane. That doesn't tell you how bad his defense was. He played 116 games that year, so it wasn't like it was a small offensive sample or anything. He had a negative 60.4 defensive rating per Fangraphs that very much offset his 11.8 offensive rating. But that is Ryan Domit. That is Ryan Domit. But anyway, I guess the last couple of things I have to say before we take a break. Vlad was probably 11. Semien was probably 12. Trey Turner just missed the cut. Xander Bogaerts, Zach Wheeler, and Corbin Burns were probably the last couple people who I considered for the last spot. Yeah, Vlad was my number 12 after Cole at 11. I already talked about Cole. I think my reasons for leaving Vlad off are similar to yours. 1, track record, 2, defense. But 3, I do think based off some of the metrics, he overperformed a little bit this year. And not that the numbers aren't going to continue to be elite, but I do think that there is some reason to think that he's not as good as 2021 was. So I had a hard time including him on the top 10, although when I did do an initial draft, he was like sneaking around there at 9. Corbin Burns was there, but kind of the same deal as Vlad, with the track record just isn't there. So I had a hard time including him. If Corbin Burns puts up another Cy Young like season, he's probably in the top 10 list next year. Max Scherzer, just to put some respect on someone who has just been awesome throughout his career and also put up a very good 2021 season split between the Nationals and the Dodgers. He had a 2.46 ERA. He also garnered some consideration. Marcus Semien, I'm still not fully in on Semien. I mean, the defense is really good. The bat is really good, but he had one really good season where he spiked in 19 and then a good season where he spiked this year in 21, but like has done very little beyond that. And I am a little worried about how that long-term deal is going to age for the Rangers. Although I think you could also argue he ends up just being a better later career player like Adrian Beltre was. So I'm just not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those were mostly the names that I considered. Kyle Tucker, I also considered, and I do think we could easily see him be a top 10 player next year. I'm really high on him, but I did not consider him for that long. That's the only other guy I wanted to mention.
Yeah. Speaking of Kyle Tucker, maybe Austin Riley is kind of in that genre for me of guys that I consider a little bit, and maybe Rafael Devers as well. Guys who could crack the list next year, but were kind of maybe at the back of the 10 to 20 range.
Yeah, I think Devers certainly warrants that consideration. I think it's a little premature with Riley. I don't think he's a 303 hitter. I think that batting average is going to come down a little bit. Like he had a 368 batted with it. And I do think we'll see some regression, and he's not that good defensively. So while I think Austin Riley is maybe like a top 25 to 30 guy, I don't know if I'm like ready to like consider him as a top 10 kind of candidate, even though I really love Austin Riley. Like I think he is a very, very, very good third baseman, and I'm kicking myself for trading him away.
Mm-hmm. All right, but we are going to take a break now. And we will be back with our first ever mailbag segment. We got a lot of submissions. It's going to be fun.
We just got a letter. 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 Wonder who it's from.
All right. That sound means that we just got a letter. Actually, we got quite a few letters. A few of our loyal listeners have submitted some mailbag questions for us. Some of them long, some of them short. And we thought out some answers and we're going to read them off. It's going to be a lot of fun. Our first annual mailbag segment.
Yes, I am very excited for this. And let's dive into it. Our first piece of mail comes from Andrew. And Andrew asks, what would be the best team that you could put together that is an all-alliterative team? That's a very good question, Andrew. I'm glad you asked. Cam and I put together a nice team here, and I'm going to read it off. At catcher, we have MJ Melendez. First baseman, Freddie Freeman. Second baseman, Trey Turner. Shortstop, Bo Bichette. Third baseman, Manny Machado. Our quarter infield, we're doing this fantasy style, would be Max Muncy. Middle infield would be Carlos Correa. Three outfielders, Byron Buxton, Saya Suzuki, and Corbin Carroll. And then in the util spot, just for Andrew, we have CJ Crone. What do you think about the hitters on that list, Cam?
Yeah, so there were definitely some deeper positions. Infield was very, very deep, where we had Turner, Bichette, Machado, Muncy, and Freddie Freeman and Crone at first base. Outfield was a lot tougher, though. We had to go with the prospect Corbin Carroll. And then catcher, we were kind of torn between Kurt Casale and MJ Melendez. I like Kurt Casale a lot, but I think MJ Melendez is just kind of more of a fun name to put in this.
Yeah, he's a more fun name. I think there's a bit more upside. Interestingly, we initially were going to do this just Gallardo draft style, so no CI and MI. And the fact that we had to leave out Muncy and Correa to do this, like, motivated us to actually put in a CI and an MI. So we have the extra players there. But yeah, this infield is stacked. This outfield has some very talented players, but it's not as good as the infield. And I do love that half of the infield here is on my dynasty team. So I really love the alliteration. All right, let's go to the pitchers. We have a rotation of Robbie Ray, Lance Lynn, Steven Strasburg, Matt Manning, and Carlos Carrasco, with a closer, Giovanni Gallegos. Cam, your thoughts on the rotation?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good rotation. At least a pretty good top two. And then maybe Carrasco, depending on how he comes back. And then Manning's got the upside. And then Strasburg, of course, when he's healthy, is terrific as well. And then Giovanni Gallegos, I guess we only went with one reliever, but I mean, he's one of the top holds guys that you can find. I think we got a good pitching staff here.
We really do. I personally love this 1-2 punch of Ray and Lynn. I think you're right. There's some question marks between injuries and just inexperience with the last three starters, but this offense is just going to be so good that it might not even matter. And you know how much I love me some Giovanni Gallegos. Get another Yellow Champ represented. And lastly, we do have the two the co-managers of this alliteration team. It is the only two members of the M-SABR Dynasty League that have alliterative first names and last names. That is Sahil Shah and Cam Kane.
Yeah, this would be a co-managed team, and I think having two of the best owners in the league would certainly do well with this team. I think this is a great team.
I think so too. Thank you for that question, Andrew. This next question comes from Zane. Zane asks, if each team was a Hall of Very Good player, what Hall of Very Good player would they be? That is a fantastic question. Cam and I are going to kick this one off here. We're going to go kind of in a reverse order here. We're going to start with the non-playoff teams from last year and work our way up. Cam, do you want to start with our first player?
Yeah, so I'll preface a little more. This was kind of tough to pick.
This took us a couple hours, like on the phone, like while I was driving. We were brainstorming, and then even when I got back, like we spent at least another like hour. It seemed like talking about this. This was a difficult one.
It was. There were a lot of ways we could have gone with it. It was tough to kind of keep it to Hall of Very Good because we kind of wanted to pick worst players for some of the worst teams. So we ended up really forcing ourselves to stick with Hall of Very Good players. And we tried to get players from their favorite teams because that's more fun. So for Daniel and Greg's team, we chose Kyle Seager. People like Kyle Seager. He was a lifelong Mariner. And this team, throughout all of its owners, has retained two players, those being Nolan Arenado and Justin Turner. Both of those are third basemen, so we thought Kyle Seager fit well there as well. And I guess with Kyle Seager recently retiring and with this team maybe having a manager shakeup at some point in the future, we thought that kind of fit as well. So Kyle Seager.
Yeah, not only that, never made the playoffs. As did Kyle Seager, he never made the playoffs. So it just felt like a very good fit. Also, Greg's a Mariners fan, so of course had to have them represented somewhere on this list. All right, the next team we have is Yuki. We all know that Yuki is a catcher at heart, so Cam and I asked ourselves, we're like, who was the most catcher of all of the catchers? And we both came up with the same name. It was Benji Molina. God, Benji Molina, just like the Molina family, I feel like is like the first family of catchers at this point, as is Yuki. Yuki is basically like a catcher family. Benji Molina might be stretching the Hall of Very Good, but he was part of a couple of World Series teams here, which is very un-Yuki-like for a team who basically finished in last year. two-time Gold Glove. So he was very solid behind the plate. And honestly, I think I could have stopped at saying the most catcher of every catcher ever, and I think you all would have gotten it. Anything else you want to add, Cam?
No, other than the Benji Molina hit for the cycle at Fenway Park, so that was a wild time.
Benji Molina hit a triple. That's the most wild part of that to me.
Yeah. Ruth, Vic, and Nick are next. We gave them, and this is maybe pushing Hall of Very Good a little bit, but we gave them Matt Harvey. Matt Harvey was a Met. Ruth Vic's a Mets fan. He is a great pitcher who had a bunch of injury issues and kind of flamed out. And that's basically half of Ruth Vic's team right now. Is great pitchers who at least had one great pitching season or a couple, but just dealt with injuries, and it's interesting to see how they're going to bounce back. Matt Harvey did not. Hopefully Shane Bieber does. But yeah, Ruth Vic and Nick are Matt Harvey.
Hey, are you saying Matt Harvey's 6.27 ERA with the Orioles last year was not bouncing back? That was his lowest ERA since 2018.
Man, could you imagine if Matt Harvey is the next Gallardo if he goes ahead and signs with the Mariners?
I wouldn't put it outside the realm of possibilities that he signs with the Mariners at some point.
The last two Gallardos were players who completed it by signing with the Reds, so it'd be interesting to watch who the next one's going to be and what team will put them there.
Ooh, Gallardo and who else?
Wade Miley was the most recent Gallardo.
Oh yeah. How did I forget about that one? Okay, yeah. Alex and Zach, we picked for them Michael Kadire. Now, Michael Kadire, we picked obviously the Twins connection for Zach was really big. Michael Kadire was just like a really I feel like likable player, and I feel like Alex and Zach are one of the more likable group of people that we have in this league. Not that everybody's not likable, but who doesn't love Alex? And one thing I loved about Michael Kadire was that he kind of peaked a little more later in his career, with the Rockies. He won a batting title then. And I feel like it kind of describes the trajectory of Alex and Zach's team, where they're, have been solid, but haven't really peaked at any point. And because of the strong farm system that they have, you're going to see them peak in the next couple of years. So Michael Kadire for Alex and Zach. Yeah.
Up next, we have Andrew. And this one is maybe a little too on the nose, but we chose Chuck. We chose Charlie Blackmon. The thing about Andrew's team, he's basically, he's kind of the Zach Veteran of the baseball league, in which he inherited just a horrible situation. But he's done a lot with it. He's built up a great farm. Charlie Blackmon, his rookie season, not his first season, but the season in which he lost his rookie eligibility, the Rockies won 64 games, but he just kept playing well. He grew into a star, and he led them to the playoffs twice. So I think Charlie Blackmon, especially being a Rocky, fits well for Andrew's team.
Yeah, I love the Charlie Blackmon pick. I think that just makes a ton of sense. Next up is Clayton and Jake, and for them we picked Tim Wakefield. Tim Wakefield had one of the longest and most interesting careers for starting pitchers. He really was just able to be on the mound. It feels like all the time. Did Tim Wakefield land on the IL that often? I feel like not.
Not really. I don't think so.
No, but Jake led the league in quality starts last year. Tim Wakefield was just kind of a rock in these Red Sox rotations for many years. I mean, he pretty consistently averaged 6 innings a start when he was a full-time starter. He wasn't always the best starter, but I think Jake, for all the quality starts that he has, definitely has kind of a mixed bag of starters here. And he is a Red Sox, and Jake is a Red Sox fan. So Tim Wakefield.
Yeah, no, exactly. The thing we were trying for with Jake's team, with him using so many pitchers throughout the year, filling up his going up to his start limit and then some every week, despite not having great stats, was we were looking for a compiler pitcher. And I think Tim Wakefield, especially with him being a Red Sox fan, works really well here.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Thank you for explaining that a little better than I did.
all right. Up next, we have Anthony's team. And this is one, there were a few ways we could have gone with this. But one of the things that's fun about his team is that it's really good in OTP, but not so much in real life. And they're fine in real life. And there were a few ways we could have gone with this. David Dahl is one, but he's not quite all very good. But I decided to go with Cody Bellinger, kind of an active player. I think he may be the only active player we chose. But Cody Bellinger, every OTP sim ever hits 1,000 home runs, literally 1,000. It's weird. I don't know how he does it, but whereas in real life, I mean, he did. Did he win MVP or did he just finish second?
He won the MVP in 2019.
Okay, so he did do that, but outside of that year, he's mostly just been fine, and even in 2021, he was horrible. So that's not true of Anthony's team. Anthony made the playoffs in 2021, but I think I like the idea of picking someone who's an OTP stud, and that's Cody Bellinger.
I love that. Nice that we're tying this into the OTP sim that we do. I think that that's particularly fun.
Exactly. Let's see it. Let's see if Anthony can three-peat. We'll find out.
Yep, we will find out shortly.
Yeah. And up next is EBO. And this was one of my favorite ones. So when you think of EBO, you want a player who is a reliever, you want a player who is a tiger, and you want a player who is chaotic. And only one player fits all three of those. It is, of course, Fernando Rodney. The Fernando Rodney experience is a real thing where he would walk the first two batters of an inning and then get the next three out to get the save. Fernando Rodney, I believe, was on that 06 Tigers team that went to the World Series. But he put together a solid career, despite constantly getting himself in and out of trouble. And I think he fits really well, and I think Zane's going to like this pick for himself.
Yeah, Zane is going to be absolutely ecstatic. I think that might be the best fit of any of the picks that we made. For Connor, we had Alexi Ramirez. So Alexi Ramirez was somebody who I thought would be a really good fit because he spiked like one really strong year where it just kind of came a little bit out of nowhere. I believe it was his, and I need to double check this season, but he had 1 year where he was an all-star and he won the Silver Slugger Award. That was 2014. And that kind of was like Connor this year where he, just kind of out of nowhere made it to the finals. But he was very solid the rest of his career, but never quite had a spike like he did that 2014 season. And I feel like that kind of represents what Connor has been so far, where he's never really been the best player in the league, but he has spiked one season so far. If we do this exercise a year from now, hopefully Connor is not Alexi Ramirez again, because that means that Connor kind of went down after his peak. Hopefully we pick somebody who was more of a consistently ascending player. But that, coupled with the fact that he was a career White Sox, I think makes this a really good pick for Connor. Alexi Ramirez also didn't play in the majors until the age of 26, so kind of a late bloomer, just like Connor. A little bit of a late bloomer after we dealt him such a shitty hand in the draft.
We really did. Boy, oh boy.
One of these episodes, we just need to go through that draft specifically and just break down every player and just how that turned out and where all those players are now. Just that would be so much fun.
Yeah. But moving on, we have Eric now. And this was a little bit of a tougher one, I think. And I'm maybe I might draw an audible here.
Oh,
Uh, um,
calling it audible.
how do you feel about Jimmy Rollins instead of Juan Pierre?
Oh, okay. I could see Jimmy Rollins. Explain the Jimmy Rollins one.
He's basically Juan Pierre, but better and not no power. And he was on really good teams throughout the course of his entire career.
Yeah, that's very fair. The one difference between Jimmy Rollins and Jimmy Rollins and Eric is that Jimmy Rollins never won a championship, despite the fact that he made it to one.
No, he won with the Phillies in 08.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They did win that one. Okay. Well, I was thinking for a second they lost it. I don't know why, but yeah, he was very good that year. Jimmy Rollins does give me the vibe of a lot of the players that Eric seems to target with the speed. And a lot of these guys do end up having a bit of power. So it was probably fair to, attach somebody with a bit more power to Eric's name. I think
the one issue is he's not a Marlin like Juan Pierre was.
yes, and the reason we like the Marlins is because one, it seems like Eric roots for them, right? It's like his second favorite team.
Yeah.
And then also like Eric, the last like 12 rounds of our startup draft, like did not know any of these prospects. So basically just drafted all Marlins prospects and actually got like Sandy Alcantara and Trevor Rogers out of that. So it was actually a pretty decent group of players he got there. But yeah, I don't think Juan Pierre quite reaches the level of very good, whereas Jimmy Rollins does. Although you are up next, and I do think your pick kind of stretches that a little bit too. But why don't you discuss your player?
Yeah, so my player, I chose Jay Bruce for myself because I really like Jay Bruce, and he's an outfielder. I have had lots of good outfielders throughout my thing. He is a Red, of course, and he hit for a lot of power. He won a couple of Silver Sluggers. My team has always hit for a lot of power. I could see maybe myself picking a guy with a higher on base percentage than Jay Bruce, but I still like the pick for myself. I couldn't find anyone.
I still like Jay Bruce for you. I think Jay Bruce, like you said, the power. You have the power with guys like Vlad and Judge, and Gallo before you traded away Gallo. Yeah, the on base percentages maybe weren't the highest, and I think that's kind of your calling card with like Soto, and I believe you led the league in on base percentage last year. But he was a Red. He did stick around with the Reds for a while. It's hard to find a perfect fit. I guess if there was a guy like did Brandon Phillips have higher on base percentages?
Not particularly.
Okay, because he's like the only other guy I can really think that fits like the Reds mold, but maybe there's like some random outfielder I'm not thinking of for the Reds. The pick for me, and I will say we did start out with a different name here, but the player was not a Hall of Very good, but I think this one fits a little better, is Cliff Lee. Cliff Lee for a couple of reasons. First, he's a very good pitcher. Pitched like an ace throughout most of his career, and I have a rotation full of aces. Additionally, he was involved in just a bunch of wild trades, like 4 in a 2-year span. He went from Cleveland to Philly at the 09 deadline, then Philly to the Mariners after the season, after the Phillies traded for Roy Halladay because they believed Roy Halladay was more likely to re-sign with them, or he signed an extension with them as soon as he got traded there. Then Cliff Lee went from the Mariners to the Rangers and a deal for Justin Smoke after the Mariners quickly realized that him and Felix Hernandez were not enough to overcome a terrible offense. And then after all that, he signed back with the Phillies, which is something I love to do. I've had quite a few players over the years who, after I trade them away, I find a way to get them to come back to my organization. Carlos Carrasco, Michael Brantley, Eddie Rosario, Matt Chapman, Trey Mancini, Carlos Martinez, just to name a few, are guys that I've once traded away and then reacquired. I think Cliff is a good pick. We initially picked Edwin Jackson for me just because of the sheer number of times he's been traded. And also I am always Chad Muller. So
yeah, so that was that. We had a lot of fun making this list. What is the next question in our mailbag?
Yeah, so the next question comes from Andrew, and Andrew asks, who is the most average player in the MLB today?
Yeah, so this was one that we thought about a lot. But going just based on 2021, or I think I did over the past 3 seasons, I looked for a player with a 100 exactly WRC plus. I think maybe I did last 4 seasons. Maybe it was 3 or 4. I looked for a player with a 100 WRC plus, and I looked for a player who averages about 2 WAR per 162 games. And there's one player who fit this mold better than anyone else. Oh, there are actually 2 players who fit this mold almost equally. One was David Peralta, but the other one was a team namesake, so I decided to go with him. It was Andrew Benintendi, who over the past 3 seasons has a 100 WRC plus and is worth 2.03 WAR per 162. So Andrew Benintendi of Benintendi's Chicken Tendies and of the Kansas City Royals. You are the former number 2 prospect in baseball, now the most average player in baseball.
Yeah, I will say Eric Hosmer also had like a 100 WRC plus over the last 3 seasons, I think it was. So he was also somebody we considered. I think Benintendi was the better pick. I will say when I first heard this question from Andrew, my first thought without doing any research was Eddie Rosario. And I stand by that, like Eddie Rosario just being a guy who just feels for some reason really average. Although I suspect he's probably slightly above average. Actually, he's probably slightly above average. That was a great question. Here's another question also from Andrew. Andrew asks, who would win in a fight between Marilyn Manson and Alice Cooper?
Yeah, this was a fun one. I ended up on the side of Alice Cooper. Just because, Marilyn Manson's kind of a creep. Whereas I think Alice Cooper is genuinely cool. So I think Alice Cooper he walks the walk of which he talks. At least he looks like he does. I get the vibe from him. Certainly more so than Marilyn Manson, who's just kind of weird.
Yeah, so I will preface this by saying when I first read the question from Andrew, I read it as Alice Cooper and Marilyn Monroe, and I got really confused. And I also thought Alice Cooper was a woman. And I quickly Googled who Alice Cooper was and forming my opinions based off of reading Wikipedia. But it seems like Alice Cooper is kind of this fake tough guy, He created this persona just because he thought that it would be cool and that it would be, attract attention. Marilyn Manson definitely is a creep, but I feel like he's a creep in a way where he has something figured out where like, if you were to test him, he'd just be this big, motherfucker who would just beat the shit out of someone. So I'm going to go with Marilyn Manson off of a gut feeling and just reading Wikipedia.
All right. So we've got a few more questions here. This one is from Lexi, listener of the show. She asks, who is the hottest player in MLB?
Oh, man. That's a good question. I do like going with a good player with a beard. And I'm going to go with Andrew Kashner. One of my favorite Andrew Kashner stories was that the Orioles have a policy. So it's not like the Yankees where they have to be clean shaven, but they have to have their faces kind of look all clean cut and presentable. Andrew Cashner got permission from the Orioles. It was part of the contract that he signed. It was a contingency that he had to be allowed to grow his beard how he wanted, because he thought that was part of his whole identity and part of the whole charm that he could bring to the team. And I really love the beard. It was a great looking beard. It served him well. He didn't pitch particularly great while on the Orioles, but he did give me a little hope when he signed him and Alex Cobb in 2018, thinking we could have one last hurrah before the team kind of fell apart. So give me some Andrew Cashner all the way. But honestly, give me any MLB player who had just like an epic beard. Like Jason Worth is up there with the hair, the long hair and the beard. Brian Wilson's beard was really sweet, just like long and black. Dallas Keuchel, I always thought, had a cool looking beard because he like really shaped it really well. It made his face like very much look like like an oval, or like a cylinder, almost like a perfect cylinder. Like I wonder how much time a day he spent on that beard. It's not like Andrew Cashner's where he just kind of let it run wild. And he also Charlie Blackmon had a pretty epic beard too. So
he did.
Or does he have it?
There, I went with Xander Bogaerts. I think he's a very attractive person, just looking at his eyes. Chris Bryant is an easy answer as well. Kevin Kiermaier. These are kind of the standard names you see. I'm looking down the list of players on my team right now. I think Anthony Rendon is pretty attractive. I don't know. Nico Horner, the Miso man, and kind of a younger guy way. He's kind of got a little bit of a baby face, but I think he's a good looking dude as well.
Love me some miso. You know, he looks even better in miso soup.
He does. See, that is a man whose face was designed to be in a bowl of soup.
Speaking of food and players, Charlie Blackmon's middle name is Cobb. At no point did anybody think he could be corn on the cob Blackmon.
Charlie Cobb Blackmon.
Yeah.
Speaking of food, our next mailbag question is another Andrew one. He asks, what is the best food, the best ballpark meal is the way he worded it. So the best food, either something that we've had once, something that's our go-to, best food.
You know what? I will, I got two here. One, I feel like I've only had Dippin' Dots at baseball stadiums. I refuse to believe Dippin' Dots exist elsewhere. And I'm not saying Dippin' Dots is even particularly good, but like when I think of ballpark food, like desserts specifically, I always think of Dippin' Dots. The other food I will say are as hot dogs. I went with Zane to an Indians game. It was him, me, Ambria, and AJ. And it was Dollar Dog Night. And Zane had like 4 of those puppies, and they were not very good. But every time I think of ballpark food, I think of hot dogs, and I think about that day with Zane. Dollar Dog Night.
Yeah, Dollar Dog Night. I've been to 29 of 30 ballparks, so I kind of I think I know a little bit.
Humble brag here. Okay.
Humble brags on the show. I loved the street tacos at Comerica. Those were incredible. I'm actually going to San Diego for my final stadium this year. And I'm assuming the tacos are going to be even better than that. So I'm very looking forward to just kind of eating all sorts of tacos in San Diego, including at the ballpark. There's some sort of chili dog thing. I know it has a special name at Nationals Park. It's like a hot dog with chili and maybe a little mustard and onions or something. That was very good. Speaking of encased meat, you can't go wrong with getting a getting an Italian sausage anywhere, really. That's kind of my go-to, particularly at Fenway. And gotta end it all with a end it all. That's not how I meant to say that. Finish it all off. No one will be ending it all with ballpark food. Finish it all off with a ice cream out of a batting helmet.
Oh, classic. Yes, that's a good one. I do love that. I feel bad. I feel like I have like boring ballpark food, but like classics, and you have all this fancy stuff. Although I feel like I don't really eat a ton of fancy ballpark food. I don't know. I feel like I've just been kind of consistent with
the hot dog is classic, or the Italian sausage is my go-to normally, but that's still kind of standard-ish. But I don't know, the ballparks try and put out all this fancy stuff. I try to I don't know, if there's something that's well known, I try to get it a lot of the time.
Same here. I feel like I haven't been to a ton of major league stadiums lately, so I haven't had a ton of their like food. I will say, like, the summer I spent in DC, like Nats Park had some like good stuff, but it's like overpriced. But it's like a little better than just like normal ballpark food. Lately, I've been getting more into soft pretzels at the ballpark.
Oh, very good. If I remember correctly, Camden Yards is a very good O-shaped pretzel.
They do. You know, that would definitely crack my list. The Charlotte Knights surprisingly had good soft pretzels this summer too. I do like having any craft beer that's at the stadium.
Absolutely.
Any stadium.
Speaking of craft beer, we need to start a podcast. I know I drink a different beer every time we record. I know you do most times. We need to start a beer podcast. What are you drinking right now while you record? Are you drinking something?
I'm drinking water today because I have an 8:45 class in the morning, and I will be doing a lot of drinking for the basketball games the next 2 days. So I'm taking a night off. But my beer of choice recently has been a Slurricane from a brewery in Charlotte called Sycamore Brewing. If anybody comes visit me in Charlotte, that's like one of the 2 breweries I absolutely have to take you to, along with many others. But that's been my go-to recently when we've been recording. What about you? What do you have?
All right. Tonight I am drinking. It's called Kank Country. It's a porter. It's a maple porter, so it's a porter with real New Hampshire maple syrup from a New Hampshire brewery called Woodstock Inn Brewery, and I really enjoyed it. It's kind of the last wintry beer that's currently in my fridge, so I kind of decided to finish it off, and I enjoyed it.
Oh, I love that. That's a good choice. What was the beer you had last week when we recorded? Because that one was, it had a really cool can, and you sent it to me, and I thought it was hilarious.
Oh, that was the one that had a seagull on it wearing a beanie.
Yes.
That was I. If I took a picture of it, I must have left the picture.
We've sent so many chats to each other where like I have to like legitimately like scroll for minutes.
There it is, New England Gangsta.
That's what it was. That's right. I was like, it had such a cool name. I was like, you need to send me you told me there was the pelican and the beanie, and I was like, I have to see the pelican and the beanie. I was like,
it's a seagull, but yeah.
A seagull. I was like, was it a cartoon seagull? Was it a regular seagull just with a beanie? And it turned out to be a regular seagull with a beanie. But like, I think
photorealistic drawing.
Yeah, it was kind of reminds you. Remember when the Orioles had the realistic Oriole bird logo? That's kind of what it reminded me of.
That was super weird, huh?
It was, yeah. It came out of nowhere. It was kind of dumb, but and that's kind of what this beer was. But like, honestly, the beanie made it really cool. It would have been dumb if it was just some normal seagull.
Well, it is a gangsta after all.
Yeah, it's a gangsta. I'm imagining that seagull talking in the Frank Mazzucato voice.
Hey, I'm a New England gangster. I'm a Long Island gangster. Is more Frank Mazzucato.
Yeah. My God, I feel like every episode, Frank Mazzucato, your Frank Mazzucato impression somehow comes up, and it never fails to crack me up.
does. But yeah, I think we've just got one question left. And this is another Lexi question. She asks, who is the M-SABR dude with the most lore?
Oh, that's tough. If we're going purely off of best story, it's Eric waking up on the side of the road after my last M-SABR party. And it's funny because I went to see Eric last week when he was in DC. And when I got there, the one of the first things that we started talking about and that Eric's friends all knew about was that story of him waking up on the side of the road. But in terms of lore, like overall, just like sheer quantity, there's some good candidates. I'm not sure.
One of the names jumping to mind, and this is more of a hockey thing, but Kenny Hodge, but I don't think we have time for him today, unfortunately.
A damn shame.
But your co-owner, Michael Davis, another guy who never really showed up again. Who is he? Where did he go? He has a very common name, so we can't just look him up or anything like that.
What if he one day came back and was just like, hey, I want to reclaim like partial ownership of this team?
What would you say? What would the ruling be around that?
I don't even know. I guess I wouldn't put him back on this team, but like I guess he could be involved in the league. I don't know. It'd be so wild. I think it would. Maybe we just have to make a 13th team. Just I don't know. Like that'd be insane.
Maybe we could. Who else? I mean, Zane has stories for days.
Not part of M-SABR, but Gervins.
Oh, the Gervin story. That was a mostly M-SABR night.
Mostly M-SABR night. I think that might be more George Monkey lore than M-SABR dynasty lore, but Gallardo shots at the first party. Mario baseball, Strato, many a Mario baseball nights, both at M-SABR parties on the Wii and also on the GameCube.
Yeah, don't forget Bowl.
Yeah, Bowl's the ultimate lore. The Eric picture. Me just absolutely destroying your stomach like 3 times over the course of a weekend.
Yeah. But yeah, as for specific dudes with a lot of lore, I think that's about it for things like that. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. A lot of fun times we've had.
Oh, we have. I can't believe it's already been 5 years, and here's to 55 more.
55 more. Well, we're M-SABR as a thing is in its finishing up his 6th year.
God, that's hard to believe.
And I was at the very first meeting along with Zane.
Man, 6 years old. In 7 years, or I guess M-SABR's getting ready for kindergarten, or in kindergarten, maybe getting ready for first grade.
Yeah, finishing it's the year 6, so I think it would be finishing first grade.
Yeah. I was gonna say I was finishing first grade when I was 6.
But yeah, so that was our mailbag segment. Thank you to the we only had 3 people submit questions, but they submitted a lot of them, so we got a bunch of good content out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of good content. I'm sure we'll get more content in future years. And this is definitely the type of segment I feel like we could repeat. Honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to doing this segment again, kind of in the middle of the season, maybe even as like a standalone episode where we just answer people's questions kind of about the season, and maybe focus on some things specifically that we don't have the time to talk about during normal episodes, where we kind of are just focused on recapping the prior weeks, previewing the next weeks, maybe talking about trades, but maybe we don't dive in as much on like some trends or some players that we otherwise would want to in the offseason. Breaking news: Reds signed Tommy Pham.
Hey, okay, he's not that good, but I mean, he's someone.
I think he's going to bounce back. He could be a mid-season trade target for some teams.
Actually, he's not that good from a fantasy perspective. Honestly, but I think he's all right. I think he'll be fine. He's not a bad pickup.
Pretty good from a fantasy perspective too. But this is I like this for you. I think he's going to bounce back. Remember, he had that the stabbing in the offseason between 20 and 21. I think that might have.
He stabbed or he got stabbed? He
got stabbed. Do you remember that?
I do not.
Yeah, search that up after we finish recording. But yeah, Tommy Pham. I like this for the Reds. I'm curious what the price is. Fun that a Reds signing broke live on the air.
Yeah, Red signing did break right on the air. Very cool. But yeah, I think that's about all we had to cover. We can close with the Tommy Pham news.
Yeah, it's a 1-year deal with a mutual option.
1-year deal, keeping it mutual. But yeah, thanks for listening. And we're gonna play you out with some music inspired by Tommy Pham, the latest Cincinnati Red.
Everybody put your hands up. Stray kids say loud, loud, loud. Shit, it took a few tag, I ain't no things, yeah. Don't want to dance in the ooh thing, yeah. 가서 여기 가서 나만 fam. It's my day, we gonna shine. 어떤 날이 that's 부산 쇼네. 달에 뭐가 호호해 무회니.
This podcast is good.